Hey, John O'Keefe here. I'm happening to be filming at a moment in my life that I never assumed would happen. I am just leaving the comfort of and safety of my classroom on the day that um, the Electoral College is supposed to just be doing a typical, usual, ceremonial piece of our kind of tradition of reading the electoral votes and just approving congressionally, as the Constitution states, that we have a peaceful transfer of power because we, the people, right now can't see it, but I've got my Declaration of Independence shirt on. We, the people, have voted. And now that we are voting, we have chosen a different leader. And our current leader is inciting violence and inciting people who think that there are lies, people who think there are fraudulent voting going on. And now those people have taken over our capital, acting as if they are in the right. They were instigated by a leader. Somebody inspired them to do this. I'd be interested in finding out whether that person has our best interests in mind or somebody else's, like themselves. It makes me very afraid, and it makes me uncertain, and it makes me feel unsafe. And you will notice that one of the things that I often will share in our community is this is supposed to be a safe place. Now, I don't know how your family feels under these circumstances. I don't know how you feel under these circumstances, but I want you to know that this is a safe place and that our word is that we are here to experience how a book can help us understand how there are good people and how there are bad people. How deep inside of us we know right and wrong. Sometimes we learn those things from our parents. Sometimes we learn those things in school. Sometimes people learn that from their house of faith. Sometimes we pay attention to heroes. Some of us look back in history and try to learn from the mistakes of our past. One of the things that I love about being a teacher is that children can see the truth. They know what the truth is. They know how to say I'm sorry, or that I'm wrong, or that I am out of control and that I need a timeout. There are some who believe that what they are doing is right. But inside, I ask them if they really, truly believe that inside themselves, that voice is saying that they are right. Their behavior is irresponsible. Their behavior is inappropriate. And those of us who pledge allegiance to the flag, those of us who sing, "My country, 'tis of thee," those people who look and understand that we, the people of the United States of America, are the voice, have a way to do this correctly. And I am going to sit and wait and be quiet and learn and read and look back at what's the most important piece, which is the Constitution of the United States is our rule book. It tells us exactly how this works. And there are leaders right now who I want to put my thoughts out to. I'm sure that they are very afraid. And I hope for them safety, comfort, and peace. I hope that these people who are choosing to have their voices heard in not the most responsible of ways, because it puts other people in harm's way, will also recognize that they have a responsibility to do their best to speak out against the injustices that they feel in an appropriate and respectful way. I want to get into Minli's story. Right now, Minli feels like she has achieved another level of invitation. When we left yesterday, she was with the king. She had somehow found the magic of a beggar by giving him a peach. And in gratitude, that peach was placed into the ground, grew and fed what I visually saw as thousands of people. And do you remember where the peaches came from? The peaches came from the greedy vendor who was unwilling to give away a peach for the needy. Now, of course, the vendor was angry. But do you believe he learned a lesson? I believe he learned a lesson. We must pay attention to lessons as they are handed to us. We must take an opportunity and recognize that our actions, that our words, and that our choices have effects, have repercussions. And that vendor had to learn kind of a powerful little story. And who did the beggar turn out to be? The king. Now, isn't it amazing? Maybe if he would have handed that beggar a peach, maybe that lesson wouldn't have had to be learned. Sometimes it does. Ever had one of those moments in your life where you realize afterwards, even though you might be really angry at your mom or your dad or your auntie or your grandma or your teacher, that they taught you a lesson that you didn't really want to learn? And then you realize later on down the line that it was actually because of you that you had that lesson taught? That is what I'm talking about. And so let us set aside the current situation and get lost in a book for a little while. But let us not forget to keep our eyes on the truth. And so the last thing that we learned was that she was going to be invited, Minli that is, was going to be invited to have dinner at kind of a secret dinner with the king. But he did invite her at the very end of last time's reading that they would take a walk and she would tell her story to the king. Here's chapter 23. Sorry. When I had the fortune of being in Vietnam with Miss Rainey, we went to a palace. And that palace had a rock garden with these massive, kind of grumpy, sculptured rocks. They weren't sculptured, they were natural rocks, but they just had different interesting bends in them. And sometimes they would have these words on them. Do you see those words kind of up close? Now, they don't look like our words because they're written in a different language. They are written in symbols. And this reminds me a lot of those beautiful palace gardens that we went and toured. And so I'm believing that I am definitely within a palace at this point. Chapter 23. Minli and the king walked through the garden, and she told him her name and where she was from and about her journey. Remembering the fish's warning, she carefully didn't mention dragon waiting in the forest for her. As they walked, the patterned stone pathways gently massaged her feet, and the sun seemed to disappear like a closing flower. When they finally approached the pavilion, night had fallen. Well, I'm going to infer that this is a very large garden. I mean, it was afternoon when they found each other, right? So, the king said, "Now you have come here to find the guardian of the city." "Yes," Minli said, and looked at him expectantly. "And you think the guardian of the city is me?" the king said. "Yes," Minli said. "Do you know what the borrowed line is? May I have it?" "The borrowed line," the king repeated, and they stopped in front of the pavilion. The moon's reflection fastened onto the water's surface, and Minli saw why the pavilion was called Clasping the Moon Pavilion. The image of the moon lay protected in the water like a glowing pearl. And the king stared at it in deep thought. "Come, let's eat, and then we'll see what can be done about your borrowed line." Minli entered the open-air pavilion. Now, I want you to picture a pavilion, okay? A pavilion is probably kind of like a place in which it's like a gazebo, a place that you walk into, and it has a very large open space that is closed to the outside. Now, from what I understand is that there is clasping the moon, and there seems to be a pool in the center of the pavilion, and that they are looking down at it because it holds on to the moon, because probably it's in open air. So obviously you can see the reflection in the moon or in the water of the moon above. And remember, we had the buffalo boy who only gets visited once a month by his friend, and that only comes on the night of the full moon. So you have to understand that the moon right now, my fourth grade friends will probably know that we have a very gibbous moon, a very full, but not quite full moon, that kind of gibbous moon, right? Okay, so Minli entered the open-air pavilion. At the center, 2 stools and a small table of elaborately carved ginkgo wood waited for them. A large, finely woven bamboo basket as tall as Minli's waist stood next to the chairs. It's pretty tall. The king eagerly lifted off its lid, and rich, warm aromas floated in the air, making Minli's stomach grumble. The king took out the plates of delicate pink shrimp dumplings, savory noodles and pork, dragon's beard bean sprouts, emerald green chives, and a bowl of white jade tofu soup. Oh my gosh. Thai food, Vietnamese food, Chinese food, Korean food. All these things sound so good right now. Oh my gosh, my stomach is rumbling. I should have had a snack. Why didn't you tell me to have a snack? A pot of tea and an assortment of cakes sat on the bottom layer of the basket. To finish off the dinner, the king handed Minli a pair of intricate gold chopsticks that weighed heavily in her hands. And with his urging, Minli began to eat what was easily the most delicious meal she had ever had. Before I continue, they gave us a nice picture of the pavilion. They gave us a nice picture of the moon. And my picture of the idea that the water was inside the pavilion, not true. It actually has a roof and open air. Obviously, look, no walls. And obviously the lotus flowers, and look at the moon in the lake outside the pavilion. Ooh. So that means they walked all the way down this, and this is on the end of that space. And then you have this beautiful water on the side with lotus flowers, and you have the moon here. But look at who's over there, Minli and the king. I just love Gracelyn's pictures. I love the artistry that is in this part. Okay, so now that I have a real picture, I can actually really kind of get an idea of what's going on. I'm not sure what the borrowed line is that you are looking for, the king told Minli as he sipped his tea. They had finished eating the main meal, and she was enjoying a turtle-shaped cake filled with sweet and soft red bean paste, a taste not known to her before. As she swallowed, its richness seemed to warm her from her throat to her stomach. "But I think I can guess," the king replied. With great effort, Minli stopped eating and looked at him. "You think you can?" she asked, and suddenly a hope filled within her. "What do you think it is?" she asked. "Do you know why this city is called the City of Bright Moonlight?" the king asked. Minli shook her head. "My great-great-grandfather changed the name of his city. It used to be the City of the Far Remote. But after he came to power, he changed it to the City of Bright Moonlight," the king said. "Most people thought it was because he had a poetic heart. But it was more than that. Have you ever heard of the story of the magistrate that tried to outwit the old man of the moon?" Minli nodded. "He tried to kill his son's destined wife, but they ended up getting together anyway." "Ah, you do know this story," the king smiled. "That magistrate was my great-great-grandfather's father. And the city is the city that his son became the king of through marriage." Wait, my great-great-grandfather's father. Magistrate Tiger is great-great-grandfather's father. That means great-great-grandfather was the son who married the girl in order to be loyal. Oh my gosh. And then just, I mean, as far as making sense of this whole thing, he is the one who renamed the City of the Bright Moonlight. And they're sitting in a pavilion called, what was it called? Oh my gosh, I can't stop. City of Bright Moonlight. And they're standing in clasping the moon pavilion. City of Bright Moonlight. And okay, anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm so excited about this. That was my great-great-grandfather's father. And this city is the city that his son became king of through the marriage. So the story is real, Minli said. "Well, it is a story that has been passed through my family for generations," the king said. "But there's more to it than what most have heard." So now that she's meeting the king, she's getting to know secret information. Information that not all the legends of the regular people would have. But the king knows more. The unknown part of the story of the old man of the moon. More information. After the old man of the moon told the magistrate that his son would marry the daughter of a grocer, Magistrate Tiger flew into a rage. With both hands, he grabbed the page and tore it from the book. But before he could rip the page in two, the old man's eyes stared into his, and the light of the moon seemed to bind the magistrate totally still. As the silence hung in the air, Magistrate Tiger's anger turned to fear. But finally, the old man of the moon nodded at him grimly. "Pages of the Book of Fortune do not tear easily. But that paper was being sent to you before I borrowed it," the old man said. "So perhaps it is only fitting that you finally receive it. Take it. The book has bestowed some extra qualities within it, though they will be as useless to you as the original paper would have been." And without another word, the old man of the moon stood up and walked away up the mountain. The magistrate could do nothing but stare, clutching the ripped paper in dumbfounded silence. "He tore a page of the Book of Fortune," Minli said. "Yes," the king said, "but he himself was never able to read the page. So it remained useless to him, just as the old man of the moon had said it would be." So he is being taught a lesson. Your rage can tear a piece of paper, but the power of being able to read it, the power of being able to understand what that page was supposed to be for, you don't get it. And so it still is useless to you. Feeling a little similar to what I'm understanding today to be like right now. Come, the king said, as he walked out of the pavilion onto the bridge under the moon. As Minli followed, he reached inside the breast of his shirt, slowly took out a gold-threaded pouch, and said, "This is the ripped page. It has been passed down from generation to generation, studied by kings of the city of bright moonlight. None of us have ever understood what the old man of the moon meant when he said it was borrowed." Minli watched, fascinated, as the king took from the gold pouch a delicate, folded piece of paper. Paler than even the white jade tofu she had been eating for dinner, the paper seemed to have a light all its own, dimming the gold threads of the pouch that held it. "It was my great-great-grandfather," the king said, unfolding the paper, who realized that the words on it can only be seen in the bright moonlight. He renamed the city of bright moonlight, as a reminder for the kings that followed him. Minli looked at the paper as if in a daze. In the moonlight, the page began to glow. A single line of faint words, as if written with shadows, was scrawled upon the page in language Minli had never seen. "So I think this paper, which the old man of the moon said he borrowed," the king said, "this written line, torn from the Book of Fortune, is the borrowed line you might be seeking." "Of course," Minli said. And excitement bubbled inside of her. Now, excitement can't really bubble inside you. That's called an idiom. Now, it's a beautiful visualization, but that is one of those figures of speech that we were talking about yesterday. The idea that the excitement bubbles inside. Now, it doesn't really, but you've been excited about something, right? You've had that real excited moment. That moment, yeah, that's what we're talking about. But her excitement, sorry, I almost read the wrong line. "Of course," Minli said, and the excitement bubbled inside of her. It must be. But her excitement popped as she looked at the carefully preserved page and remembered how the king had had it on his person, carefully and preciously kept in a pouch around his neck. It seemed impossible that he would give it to her in such a cherished treasure, just to a little girl who said she needed it. It was only after much study that my great-great-grandfather was able to decipher the words, the king said, and that is when he realized that the words changed according to the situation at the time. From then on, whenever a king of the city of bright moonlight has had a problem, he consults the paper. "And it tells you what to do?" Minli said. "Yes," the king gave a wry smile. "Though not the way you always think. Sometimes the line on the page is more mysterious than the problem." And with that, the king looked down at the line. As he read, a startled expression came across his face. "What does it say?" Minli said. "It says," the king said slowly, "you only lose what you cling to." Gosh, this is the perfect thing to read right now for me. You only lose what you cling to. What a historic day to have a line like that being said from the Book of Fortune. Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Okay. You only lose what you cling to. The king's words seemed to hang in the air. All was silent except for the soft rustling of page in the gentle breeze. Minli, unable to speak, watched it flutter as if it were waving at her. Personification. Hello, paper can't wave at you, but it goes like this. Right? That's what you're supposed to see in your brain. Okay. Sorry. I get so excited that I lose my space. Okay. Where was I? I should have put my finger down. Darn it, I should have. Okay, here it is. Watched it flutter as if it were waving at her. "So, it seems your request," the king said, "deserves consideration. The line tells me as much. Let me think." Minli looked at the king, quiet but puzzled. "For generations, my family has prized this paper. We have honored it for spiritual power and authority. It has been passed on and studied and cherished and revered. It has been valued above gold or jade, the king said slowly. But what is it, really? Minli shook her head, unsure if she should respond. What do you think the king's thinking? You only lose what you cling to. What's he clinging to? What has his family clung to? It is, actually, the king said, simply proof of my ancestors' rudeness, his unprincipled anger and ruthless greed. Yet we've disregarded that. Instead, we guard and protect this written line so dearly that the rulers of the city of bright moonlight carry it all the time, not daring to let it out of their possession. The moon seemed to tremble as ripples spread over its reflection caught in the water. The king continued, again, speaking more to himself than to Minli. We have clung on to this piece of paper, always afraid of losing it, the king said. But if I choose to release it, there is no loss. Minli felt her breath freeze in her chest. Really? Her breath froze in her chest, or did she go, She knew the king's mind was in a delicate balance. If he refused to give her the line now, she knew she would never get it. And perhaps it was never meant for us to cling to. No matter whom the paper originally belonged to, this is a page from the Book of Fortune, a book that no one owns, the king said. So perhaps it is time for the paper to return to the book. A wind skimmed the water, and Minli could see her anxious face as pale as white as the moon reflected in it. You only lose what you cling to, the king repeated to himself. He glanced again at the paper and then looked at Minli. A serene expression settled on his face, and then he quietly smiled and said, So, by choosing to give you the line, I do not lose it. And with those words, he placed the paper into Minli's trembling hands. Oh my gosh. I have to read another one. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Chapter 24. I thought I was going to get to like chapter 27 today, but we are only going to go here. I need you to pay close attention to this. What do you notice? It is a large door. It has a very large arch. But what is there upon the sides? I think those are lions in a bit of an maybe Oriental fashion, maybe an Asian motif. And so we want to be really attentive to that. Those are dragons. We saw those a lot in Thailand as well, but many of them seen in Chinese artwork. Outside the city, okay. She's inside the inner city, and then there's the outer city, and then there's the forest. And remember who's out there? Check it out. Outside the city, Dragon waited. Even after Minli had disappeared, the dragon still watched from the trees. He had felt odd when she had passed the old stone lions and the door had closed behind her. He realized that he had never had a friend before, and what a nice feeling it was to have one. And perhaps that was why the second night, when the sky darkened and the moon rose, Dragon crept out from the shadows of the trees and approached the closed, sleeping city. While he wouldn't admit it, Dragon thought that standing by the walled city might make him feel just a little bit less lonely and a little bit closer to Minli. Pause. I need to remember time, because setting is not only place, it is how long has passed. So let's make sure we understand this. Minli entered the city, met Buffalo Boy, and spent the night with Buffalo Boy. She saw the star woman, or the friend who only comes out at night, once a month. And then the next day, she went to the market and she watched the tree grow, and she followed the beggar into the palace, who ended up being the king. And that night was the night that she and the king were together. So the second night is the night that Dragon is entering or walking towards the wall to feel less lonely. So this is the same night she's with the king on the inside. But they don't know that. They don't have cell phones. Yeah, you got to understand that there aren't anything such as cell phones. Have you ever noticed anybody spending 5 hours of their day taking a look at like updates on Instagram? No, not at all. So the reality is that they don't know where each other are. The silver moon, ooh, it's an eye closer. Ready? Close your eyes and just picture this. The silver moon cast a frosted glow upon the rough stone wall and guardian lion statues. Dragons stared at them as he approached the gate. Their stocky, heavily built bodies seemed to weigh down the stone platforms they sat on. And the darkness of the night made their stiff, curly manes look like rows of carved blossoms. One lion held a round ball underneath his forearm. The other held down a lion cub that seemed to be grinning at him. In fact, all the lions seemed to be grinning at him as if he were a secret joke that they were watching. "Am I so funny?" Dragon asked them as he passed. "Yes!" bursted out one of the lion cubs, wriggling free of his mother's paw. "You are very funny!" The lion cub, that was a statue, just came alive and responded to Dragon. Well, I shouldn't be overly surprised. I mean, we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen in this. As Dragon jumped back in surprise, the lion cub laughed out loud, obviously highly amused that the dragon was shocked. But with his laugh, both adult lions shook themselves from their platform. "Xiao Mao!" the mother lion scolded. "Don't laugh at the lost dragon. Besides, you know the rules. No moving in the presence of others." "But it's a dragon," the cub said, "not a people. He doesn't count for the rules, does he? Besides, he's funny. Big dragon trying to tiptoe like a mouse?" "Xiao Mao," the deep male voice. "Xiao Mao," the deep male voice of the other lion boomed in the air. The cub gave a half-hearted look of shame and was immediately quiet and still. By this time, Dragon had found his voice. "You're alive then?" Dragon asked. "Of course we are," the male lion said, scrutinizing the dragon with interested eyes. "Everything's alive. The ground you're walking on is alive. The bark of those trees are alive. We are always alive. Even before we were lions and we were just raw stone. However, carving did give us a little bit more personality." "You're a fairly young dragon, aren't you?" the female lion said kindly. "You seem only 100 or 150 years old. Don't worry. You'll learn soon enough." 100? The lion cub said. "I'm much older than you. I'm 868. "And you still have not attained wisdom?" your father lion told him. "Don't tease the young one." "Well, what are you doing here?" the lion asked. The cub asked. Not the unkindly dragon. Not unkindly. Dragons don't usually come down to earth much. Are you lost? Though unusual, the lions weren't unfriendly. So Dragon settled down and told them the whole story about being born, living in the forest, meeting Minli, and now their travels to find the borrowed line and the old man of the moon. The lions didn't interrupt once, though the cub did snicker from time to time. "You belong to Magistrate Tiger?" the cub said when Dragon had finished. "That means you're the terrible dragon. You're the one that destroyed the king's father's palace. What a lot of trouble you caused." Dragon looked at the older lions questioningly. "About 100 years ago," the female lion said, "the king's father fled his home village. A dragon had destroyed his palace and his people had cast him out, saying that he was very bad luck. He came here, intending to make his home with his son and to live off the son's wealth and power as the king of the city of bright moonlight. There were bad times here for the city, as the king's father and the officials he brought with him were very corrupt and very greedy. We were quite concerned." "You?" the dragon asked. "Why would it concern you?" "Why would it concern us? It is completely our concern," the male lion said. "We are the guardians of the city. It is our responsibility to watch and keep the city turning. To see it begin to crack alarmed us to no end. And the lion held out the round ball he held in his hand and showed Dragon an old, deep fracture, a crack. Okay, I'm going to give you that one. When you fracture your arm, it means you've broken it. You've made a line in it. So this ball that the lion was holding, that he held in his hand, and showed Dragon an old, deep fracture that was slowly being filled with the dust of the earth. "What did you do?" Dragon asked. Now here's the deal. It's already been 35 minutes. I have the answer to what happened to the fractured ball, but I think I'm going to wait until tomorrow. I feel like a fractured ball that seems to be filling in with dust, and the idea of the borrowed line saying something to the extent of, "You only lose what you hold on to." And a palace that had had some bad times. But at this point, the palace is beautiful. And I think that this right now is a perfect place to stop for today. So we've gotten partway through chapter 24, and we are at a place, remind me tomorrow, called the String of Destiny. And what I'm going to share with you is this. Today is a historic day in America. Now, you may be in America, you may be from someplace else, but right now, there's a lot happening. Now, I want you and I hope for you that you are safe, and I hope that you are content, and I hope that you pay attention, and I hope you think about those people and hope that their hearts can be lifted, kind of like how Dragon right now is standing outside the wall and hoping that Minli is doing okay on the inside. But I want you to think about that line between today and tomorrow, that you only lose what you hold on to. And see how that message resounds in our story of America today. I love you. Be safe. Keep learning. Pay attention. Go out and live life, because it's the only one you have. And today is the most important day of your life. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here yet. So go and be today. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I can't wait to read with you again tomorrow. I love you. Now get out of here.